All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Good evening. Thank you so much for making the drive out here tonight. I'm Dana. I work with Dr. Stabline. We promote the USF Masters of Science degree, specifically in AI and business analytics. We have been hosting these meetups, I think, a little over 4 years now. It's been an amazing experience. We've met so many great people in the community, both people new to the industry and people who are all the way up at C-suite level. And it's been a really great experience. Out of curiosity, how many people are in the audience that have never been here before? Oh, about half. Well, welcome. Yeah, really glad that you're here. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in. I will introduce our speaker tonight. So this is Kash Medhi. Kash is an experienced growth ops and strategy leader with a proven track record, driving revenue growth and leading go-to-market strategies across North America, Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and South America. With deep expertise in data and AI governance, privacy, and digital transformation, Kash continues to influence the industry, contributing to thought leadership on platforms like Data Stash by Kash, Medium, and CDO Magazine. Please help me welcome Kash.
Thanks so much, Dana, and welcome everybody for taking the time to be here. I'm quite excited to share this particular topic, which has been top of mind as I connect with a lot of data leaders across industries. So as Dana explained, gave a bit of an intro from my side. I'm not going to go too deep, but just to jump right in, I'm expecting a lot of questions, of course, so don't be shy. Feel free to stop me at any given point if you have any questions. But just for today, my topic today is really around data, AI-ready data, especially as everybody around the world is using generative AI tools. You're seeing a lot of news about OpenAI versus DeepSeek. Today, I want to talk to you about what's a responsible use looks like, and also some guidance for any organization that's going big with AI. So I'll talk about what is AI-ready data, which is a big topic. Then I will also talk about the role of data literacy, because AI is as good as the context you would provide into this AI. So I'll address the topic of literacy. And then also I'll cover data workers, which is really frontline workers, people on a day-to-day basis. If, let's say, you're a data analyst, data scientist, engineer, people have different roles in given organizations. So what does it mean for them? And then if you have time, I will also go into a customer story. Technip Energies, this is an energy company, global organization, how they're transforming their company to become a data-driven company. So I want to also bring in some practical case studies there. So with that, I'm going to jump right in. As Dana mentioned, I've had several roles, but I've spent majority of my time, the past 12 years, in the data and governance space. I've been with some of the first movers like Calibra, Informatica, if you heard about these companies. Now currently with DataGalaxy as VP of Growth Operations and Strategy, which is really about I help companies successfully establish governance initiatives, really making sure the data is well-defined, it is fully understood by workers, as well as unlocking opportunities with data. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn if you like. But here, I want to start with what is AI-ready data. So you may have heard about this term. Is this the first time you're hearing about AI-ready data? Has anybody come across this term at all? Raise of hands. Okay. I see some mixed reactions here. So for AI to be effective, because today a lot of companies are looking at this as great opportunity, but also it presents special challenges for companies. It can put a business at risk when people are not using AI responsibly, because you could put PII information, you could put company traits, a lot of information, and you don't know where that information goes right after you put in the prompt. So to me, AI-ready data is really fitness of the data itself for a specific AI use case. So let's imagine we all go to Walmart, any retailer. A lot of these retailers, as you shop online or what have you, they tend to provide you with personalized product experiences. Like, let's say a retailer wants to drive personalized customer experience. For them to be effective, they need to have AI-ready data to provide those recommendations. So a big aspect of data is really around fitness, which is about, do I have my customer purchase history? Let's say I'm an Eagles fan. I buy a lot of swag. Hopefully, I'm not offending anybody who is not an Eagles fan. Let's say I buy a lot of swag, but for you as a company, for you to provide me some recommendation, like, hey, maybe Kash, you may like some of these other things. They need to have some history with me. So fitness of data really translates to the availability of information that may be fit for this particular personalization use case, which comes to the AI use case itself, which is around providing personalization. And then context is also very important when you are dealing with data. Like, for example, for companies to exploit data with AI, they need to know, like, what is my past purchase history? How many clicks? All of this information, this context needs to be present for this particular AI use case to be successful. And as a common AI technique, I've outlined here in the slide, collaborative filtering, which is used by a lot of retailers to provide personalized product recommendations. So now the basics are in. What is AI-ready data? You see, it's really the fit for purpose. Go ahead.
No, my question. So does bias in the data included in your AI-ready data?
Bias is a component of this. It could be, the dimension could be around the fitness, the context. Bias is big dimension of making sure data is AI ready. Yeah, great question. Moving on next, I actually was researching about this topic quite a bit, and Salesforce actually did a survey with over 14,000 workers across 14 countries. Their survey is called Promises and Pitfalls of AI at Work. One of the key learnings out of this survey is a lot of companies today lack clearly defined policies and standards that can guide their workers how to effectively use data. Now, here are some interesting statistics from this same study, generative AI tools at work. This survey found out that 55% of the data workers are using unapproved generative AI tools at work. Same study talks about people that are using banned tools that you're not allowed to use. 40% of the workers are using some banned tools to maybe do any programming. They're also using personal information, company traits, a lot of different things. And this is only increasing because the same study talks about the workers who participated in this survey. They said, we see 71% increase in our productivity, 48% increase in our engagement with our coworkers, because now all of a sudden, if you go on LinkedIn, if you read somebody's email, very polished, no grammatical errors. So very interesting, but this is only going to increase. I continue to see this could have an upward trend with people working with data. So that's why this topic is very important. Now, what does a safe and ethical use of AI looks like for companies? Now we're saying, like, okay, these many people are using unapproved tools, banned tools. What does safe usage looks like? So I've listed top 3 safe uses. Of course, you're only using your company approved generative AI tools. Second big one is you're not putting any personally identifiable information into these tools that you're not allowed to. Of course, because companies are contractually obligated to protect information about their customers. They have commitments with their stakeholders. Very important how workers deal with confidential information. And the third safe AI use is here PII or any highly regulated data that you're working with. And then what does ethical use look like? So of course, whatever information you're getting out of your generative AI tools, you're fact checking that. You're not copy pasting. Copy pasting is a bad habit. Of course, it is easy to do, but if you look at today, copyrights, in United States, data that you put into AI, so anything that's auto-generated is not copyrightable, but if you, let's say, edit that output, that is something you could copyright. So there are a lot of new developments on copyrights of how you use AI-generated information. Even more and more technologies, like I work in the technology sector, a lot of companies are focusing on, okay, how do I tag information that's human-generated versus AI-generated? Because we're going to be in a world where we don't know what is real, what is automated. And this is where, when I talk to a lot of chief data officers who have the responsibility around data, one of their top of mind item is, okay, we are mobilizing our workers to enrich knowledge that lives in their head and define their data with context, because in a lot of companies, people are working for several years. They know where all the bodies are buried. One of the roles or responsibility of the chief data officer is to translate or bring that information out of people's head, and then put that context maybe into a technology like a governance platform or a SharePoint site where people can access this information easily. So ethical use, really fact-checking the output from AI. And of course, use tools that are supported by big data points. Like today, what you're going to see is more and more companies are going to disrupt the field. Like you've seen DeepSeek, how quickly people have got onto it for its accuracy or power, availability without having to pay a lot of money. But of course, continue to look for tools that are backed by researchers, supported by good ethics when it comes to that technology. And of course, using company-approved generative AI tools is an ethical way, one of the ethical ways as well, part of this outline. Now, I run a CDO Masterclass program back in 2022, having spent last 12 years in the space. One of the things I constantly have seen in the space is a lot of big organizations like Fortune 500 companies. They have some of the most sophisticated data initiatives. So the CDO Masterclass program started with an idea that why should all these Fortune 500 companies have all of the knowledge? Why should you as a subject matter expert have all of this knowledge? How do we translate this back to more communities, more people? So in my last season 7, I ran a survey with participants. So this program has reached about 30 plus countries since its launch. So I asked people, what's top of mind for you when it comes to AI-ready data? I was expecting an answer like everybody saying, okay, we're going to go invest, double down, or our company's investing this much in data. But more and more data leaders that I talked to in the program, they said their number one priority is data governance, which is really about making sure whatever you feed into AI is fully defined, is backed by appropriate business context. You're able to trace this, where this information is coming from, because your data is coming, is stored across various architecture settings. A lot of times when companies, grow and they have more products, they have a lot of systems that collect data. This data is actually sitting in black box silos. Without the context, you are unable to find use cases like product personalization, as I mentioned to you. You're unable to fully utilize this data that you're sitting with for several years. So data governance was one of the top things. The second item that people identified was data and analytics stewardship. It makes sense for me because for any company, analytics is the largest consumer of data. They have data scientists, analysts, a lot of different people with different backgrounds working with data. So big focus was we want to have roles, responsibilities defined, and also create a network of data producers and consumers and make them effective. But if you look at studies today, if you look at a lot of research papers that are out there, you will see a lot of times data workers they're spending at least 20% of their time finding the right information. Where does my customer data live? What do we have any usage guidelines, things like this. And the third was AI ready data. Actually, this is all connected. If you look at this, if you do governance right, if you have analytics stewardship set up appropriately, you can unlock the potential around AI. This is where third use case came into play. And the fourth, I added a fourth item here because it came very close to AI ready data, which is around observability, like real-time monitoring of issues around data itself. Like if let's say some table column breaks here, it's going to break another report. How do I make sure I detect anomalies in my data? How do I remediate this? So I thought it was interesting to show you, while everybody's talking about AI, but the people who are actually responsible for data, governance is important more than ever for them. And this is a very interesting distinction to watch in the market. Now, building the foundation for generative AI, right? Okay. I was actually watching JD Vance actually in the summit not too long ago. He brought up a great point. Again, I don't have any political affiliation here, so I want to throw it out there. But what's interesting is, he brought up a point about companies and countries regulating versus innovating. How he talked about United States doubling down on AI and how we need to, which is where our country sees a great innovative platform to serve other countries that can help keep you all safe, do a lot of things with data. But of course, if you look at the statistics today, companies really, any company, any organization, any country that's looking to exploit AI, they need to have clearly defined policies and standards. Of course, if we don't know what the rules are of society, how do we know if I maybe grab your laptop without your permission? It's called, I could go to jail for that or whatever. Who writes those rules? So I think what's important here is any person that's working with data needs to be aware of these generative AI policies. So any company that's exploiting, these opportunities, they need to have clear guidelines around how workers or how people can use AI at work. The second big piece is, of course, it's not gonna, you would write a policy and all of a sudden everybody is gonna comply with the policy. The second big focus area that I see is to train and educate, because any new employee that's coming in the organization, if you want to be a data-driven company, if you want to be a AI-first company, a lot of investment needs to happen in terms of educating. And what I see a lot of leaders are doing today who have this responsibility is to work with change management teams, onboarding teams, working with HR, putting in maybe some of these key items part of their job description, and put ways to measure how these employees can play an active role when it comes to AI and governance. And which brings me to the third chevron here on this slide, which is data governance. If you're new to data governance, it's really about helping organizations easily find, understand, and trust the data so they can play with any offensive versus defensive type of use cases, like which means like operational efficiency. I want to get my data right so people can find it effectively. Or let's say more of an external driver. My company has to comply with regulations like insurance companies, banks. They have, they are heavily regulated. So that's more of a defensive type of use case. But of course, what governance does is really helps organizations have clearly defined roles and responsibilities of people, like who is the data owner? If something goes wrong with my data, who is the subject matter expert that I could connect with, what have you. And of course, lastly, technology can assist. I put technology at the end because, you could, I'm reminded a quote from a good friend of mine, Danette McGilvery. She's a pioneer in the data governance or data quality space. She said, a hammer doesn't make you a good carpenter, but you wouldn't be a good carpenter without a hammer, right? So sometimes people think I'm going to get the greatest technology is going to solve everything. No, it's not going to solve everything. So technology is a key piece here. Of course, if you have the right intention behind how you're onboarding, bringing these things to use. So initial use cases, defining roles, responsibilities, making sure people who have the need to use AI or experts around AI, they have availability of this AI-ready data that has this fitness, context, the use cases defined, and everything. So, but of course, you want to make this particular data set available for self-service. And of course, over time, organization also have to monitor the policy execution. So, policy execution could be around, I have this data, which is tagged with, maybe it is at a medium level, high or low, what have you. You can have that. So maybe a few ways. I've also outlined some steps here. Step one, we see that a lot of the information companies have today, it may be stored in various databases, ETL platforms, reporting tools, cloud on-prem, a myriad a bunch of systems, if you will. One of the key things is if you're a frontline worker or if you're a leader that you could take here is really registering those sources into like a one centralized place where I could see what sources are out there, and then you could start tagging information. And of course, you also want to be mindful around understanding where your data gets created, produced, or consumed. In the masterclass, I had one of the ladies, she mentioned, Kash, we have sellers. Anytime they write, they create data. But sellers, they don't think of themselves as data creators. For them, they're just there, they're selling, and they call it a day. But for us, because this person is in charge of data governance, data management, is responsible to make sure people understand that, hey, you are actually in the category of data creator versus producer. So what's important in the step one is really understanding the network of people, data that I'm writing or creating. Is it really providing intel for us to make a business decision? And this is something that a lot of leaders are looking at a more granular level. And again, in the industry, the step one, what's also important is, sometimes when you put in a lot of effort, but there's lack of adoption, especially in the governance space. A lot of people are non-technical and they need to be able to access information. So if you're not providing them something intuitive or somewhere where it's easily available, people are not going to use that. So first step is really what I'm trying to help with this foundation is not have you boil the ocean, but start to look for, almost like you arrange your closet, right? You put in your clothes here, your shirts, your pants, and what have you, and then you know what you're going to pick. So out of this, the step two is really certifying your most critical data sets or critical data, key applications. And I was speaking with this real estate company out of San Diego. They have one of the largest property data set. And Russ, I'm going to be, hopefully I'll come to your talk since you're addressing that topic. So one of the things that they were struggling with is, Kash, we have so many systems and applications. We don't know where to start with when it comes to governing and reaching our data. So after a few weeks of like consulting and working with them, interviewing different stakeholders, one thing, what they found out, which is funny when I think about it, they said, okay, we have got two databases that have the most enriched data and they make the most money for our organization. So we want to start governance there. So again, what I'm saying is don't boil the ocean, start with the most critical data that you have at your hands. Of course, create videos, training, and other things. But here, if you look at the three chevrons here, executives referring to KPIs, because sometimes, you also need to get buy-in from executives. And one of the challenges for data and AI leaders today is the lack of sponsorship. Maybe the executives fail to understand this. They may be just looking at a dashboard sitting in their office. I'm not saying everybody's doing that, but for their day-to-day, they are making decisions that are dependent on that KPI, but they don't understand what it takes to create that report, how it's connected, how you're making sure your data is that's fed into these processes is fully governed, it's traceable, where you have upstream, downstream impact assessment. So executives, need to be able to reference some common KPIs. Business and IT people, sometimes there's some divide as well. The way I look at governance is really, it's sometimes when you say this word governance, people think it's police action. You're here to control. You're going to tell me how I'm going to use my data. It's not actually. It's really a service. I actually see it as a marriage counselor between the business and IT to really cross-pollinate their knowledge with data. So that's how possibly you could achieve AI-ready data. So I'm going to give you some examples here. For a typical insurance company, again, so just following the thought here, right? So I defined what AI-ready data is. I gave you the context around what could be the foundation, but of course, much of this is people's business. And I've taken an example from an insurance company where you have different stakeholders at different levels. For typical company, any of you here starting your career, maybe you're working in one particular function. What I'm trying to do is give you a bird's eye view into an organization. I was working with this insurance company who's putting together a foundation, the data governance program at the enterprise level. And it required concerted effort from executives to data leadership to business and technology functions. So for this company, the C-suite committee would be responsible for approving the vision and strategy, and data leadership teams like somebody who's a data product owner in charge of architecture, engineering, analytics, what have you. They're the ones that are making the high level decisions for each of those areas. And then underneath that, you have business and technology functions like underwriting, claims, risk control, and other things. Actually, this company, I cannot disclose the name just yet, but they're going to be at Gartner Orlando conference, which is happening first week of March. But one of the things they achieved with applying governance was they created this centralized repository of data, so which enabled a risk management team to quickly find where all claims data lives, and then also identify the common causes of claims. And then from there, they would build a strategy to prevent claims, increase policyholder experience, and also increase profit margin. So you see the value chain is very much connected when you have good responsible practices around data, which I call data governance here. Any questions, comments? Are you all following along? Am I talking too fast or too slow? Any questions?
I was just, so earlier on, I mean, sure, but earlier on you were talking about like the safety of loading your data. Well, if you're loading your own data, you should have your own instance. So if we are running our own instance, like you have to install it locally, manage it, run the models. Can't use one on the web, or you can't load the data there, right? It has to be in your own warehouse. And the second thing, I mean, if it's big data or something. And the second thing is, we're finding that we have to find the actions. What are the actions or commands you want as output? And map that back to where your inputs are. Because we know, I mean, the AI doesn't know what to do with it.
Yeah, so I think that
120 commands, 120 actions, and you figure out if the data will guide you as to which one you should do.
Yeah, so I think what I try to address here is really the ethical way, because sometimes people are blindly using the output. For example, like you've assumed you've provided the best prompt and you expect the best result, but of course, without having to check that, somebody is deploying that elsewhere. But great comment. I could see just companies having appropriate policies and standards can definitely keep employees in check, and also over time, how do you audit? Like you're saying it, I believe you, but how do I at a broader organizational level? It's really hard to keep track of. And if you also look at the statistics today, especially with generative AI, every 12 to 18 months, the volume of data is doubling, tripling. So the problem is going to get even more complicated. So, yeah.
Well, one, addressing, you're talking about utilizing an SLM, correct? Like for within your
And
specific
the same,
way?
we don't load it to other people, it has to stay in a warehouse, so we have to download the model, build it on. all
But I
that.
mean, are you guys using SLMs or are you guys actually utilizing one of the on-prem frontier models?
We download and do it all ourselves, the training. So we don't let the data go out in the warehouse, we can't,
What industry is this?
it's.
Without having to put
retail
you on
data,
spot.
Retail data.
Retail data, okay.
And,
Of course, you have on-prem stuff. You're dealing with a lot of sensitive information.
everything. That's under contract, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Um,
Also, like, so there's a theory of what should be done. But then, at least from what we hear, in terms of like, when we talk to people that deal with the governance of data, the data is everywhere and it's hard to actually get a like grasp of where things are. And that's where a lot of the problems are.
Yeah.
Because basically it's just like, it's all over the place. And even though it's like, you may have policies in place, but when you have a sufficiently large org, it just still ends up everywhere. It's just kind of like a entropy scenario.
yeah, so in this case, I think there are a lot of technology solutions out there.
Mhm.
Of course, I work for one of them and I've worked for many of them in the past.
Mhm.
One of the things that, I was talking about don't boil the ocean because in Florida, we say, I think, worry about the alligator closest to your boat
Mhm.
versus boiling the ocean.
Yeah.
So one of the things I've seen companies do to start taking on this big problem is to define the most critical data. And it could be your top 10 reports your executives look at, or the top KPIs.
Mhm.
Like maybe for you, it could be churn rate or customer lifetime value, how much a customer is spending with the company over their lifetime, and then start to peel the onion to see, okay, where do I have customer data? Like just focusing on that aspect.
Are you guys DSPM or data security posture management, or are you guys something slightly different, more specifically governance?
More specifically, governance,
Gotcha.
cataloging,
Sure.
workflow, and other things. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. I'm trying not to sell my technology.
Yeah,
here,
yeah.
by the way. Yeah. Please.
So you talked about banned products versus unapproved.
Unapproved. Yeah. Unofficial.
So now tell me something. Many of these organizations where they're working, they are not in the bleeding edge, leading edges. They don't know what products are coming up. So how can they decide on an approved or banned product when they have not even tried using those products or haven't understood the benefits, the pros and cons of the product, right? So this is a problem which all data analytics face.
Yeah.
The industry or market is evolving so fast, expecting a company and the management or the people who are deciding the approved versus banned products, being aware of all these new things boiling up in the market.
Yeah.
Is too much to expect. So how do you draw a line between innovation and regulation you talked about? Yes, regulation is important, but you need to allow within your company a set group of people to allow them to innovate using products, all the new products that are coming up, and then probably based on the pros and cons that everybody is observing, then they can come up with an approved and a banned list for the consumption of the whole company, probably, right? But to decide upfront that these are the approved products is actually stopping innovation from happening, at least by.
No, that's a great point, because I think in some industries, they may have, it really depends on the callous, how much risk an organization can take. If they're dealing with highly sensitive information, classified information, like I've worked with, some companies that have defense warfare type of information, and even within their own company, they have silos of this information, and somebody from HR cannot see this information, what have you. So I think you're right, actually. Matter of fact, I think companies need to innovate and explore in a more uncontrolled way, if you will. But I do also see, many of these leaders are now forced to actually look at what's out there in the market. Like they're already searching. I see more companies forming partnerships with like Microsoft Copilot. Now companies like even my company using Google Suite, for example, we have Gemini that's helping us write, better or look at our content. Like if I have a request for proposal and stuff. So in a controlled sense, yes, it's out there. But of course, I think what I would say is companies who are heavily regulated, still they need to create some kind of an island where they could still test this out and prove the value. It's almost like a proof of concept before you go out there. Of course, there's going to be like a lot of options, but this is where use case is very important from my perspective. Like if your use case is personalizing products, like you're a retailer, you want to personalize products for your customers, you have a very specific use case. You don't need to go out there and look for every AI tool out there, but there are some specializations, some models out there. Like, I was saying, what was I saying here? Filtering of your control filtering, if you will. So based on this use case, the answer is going to be right there. But you're right. I mean, you need to take risk, and depending on the industry, the risk levels are quite different. Yeah.
And then probably comes. Yesterday, whatever analysis you did with the data gave you some results with the models. Today, with the new things available in the market, I may get even better results, right? So somebody has to track both these things. Newer data coming in, newer models coming in. How do you mix and match them to get the best out of for the specific use cases?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Continue to build on top of the strengths that you over time, and then of course, as you test more technologies, you're gonna have more opportunities unlocked. Yeah,
so
for sure.
Approved list and a banned list.
Yeah,
Cannot be a forever etched stone data.
right.
It can never be that.
Again, I'm not suggesting that you have to have the approve or ban, but sometimes I think some tools that you don't know where the data is, like data sovereignty is a big issue. Today with AI, I don't know if my data is in the US or it's somewhere else.
I would say that besides AI, I mean, any company that expects you to load to their site, we can't do. So like, we have to be able, if it isn't something that you can install on our servers, we can't use it. Even Google.
Yeah, you have
can
to
put something to Google, but I mean, so we can't put that in. So what I was gonna say is one more thing, the data prep. AlphaFold, which is a recent thing talking about booking, folding, lower prices, showed that it's not just about training with the current model. You have to prep the data, somehow figure out how to simplify the data. I mean, to a way that is usable or tweak the model, improve the model. So the AlphaFold, if you haven't read about it, it's the example of a hard problem.
Okay.
So I'm just saying that it's not just the model. You have to tweak the model, or you have to change the data before you feed it in.
Yeah, data preparation, how do you integrate, and what security standards you can have around data itself.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm gonna hold on the questions. I'm looking at the time here.
Yep.
Dana is gonna tell me, Kash, you only have 5 minutes, so I'm trying to avoid that. Okay, so let's move on. So business value. So I want to go to the frontline data workers here, right? So in the day in the life, it's great to say, you need to have this and that with data, policies and standards. A lot of times, many data initiatives fail due to a lack of change management with these people, like people on the front lines working in different roles. Actually, one of the studies MIT did was they invited chief data officers from Fortune 1000 companies like Best Buy, Scotiabank, State Farm, and they asked them, are you driving an innovation? Like the study suggests the average tenure of a chief data officer. Guess what's the average tenure? Any answers?
Where's that one get?
2 years. 2 years.
2.5. So kind of close. 30 months, kind of like a honeymoon, right? If you got newly married, I'm not married yet, but 30 months. So one of the big challenges for these leaders is to really drive change management with people. So if you're an analyst, one of your biggest problems is, how do I find the right data? Does column X mean the same as column 1 from this system? How do I know that? Data scientists, you want to bring effectiveness with your predictive models, but you don't know where all your customer data is. What is your usage guideline? How you can use this data in itself. Data stewards, and these are people working in governance teams. Their job is to make sure everybody understands the right meaning context around data itself. Architects, they're the ones building blueprints around data, like, conceptual data models, logical data models. If you have a new product that you launch or new credit card, that comes with a data model the architects are documenting. And the more effective your model is going to be if the architect has the right business context. Oh yeah, I'm looking for how this card is performing in this particular demographic. How do I know that? This is all because of effective modeling around information. Engineers moving data from one place to another, they're building a lot of plumbing, pipelines. They need shared context. Like if a data scientist is going to come up with a new model or something, or take on a new initiative, they need, they're asking engineers to provide them this information where they need it the most. Product owners, they want to know if, whether this product is being implemented, or even if you're a system owner, you want to know who's using your data for what purpose. So for an organization, so now imagine if somebody says, hey, I want to do big things with AI, you see what's the background here. All these people need to work in concert to be very much successful. So I wanted to add that. And one of the things I'm also proposing is a certification process. So let's say you have data with the fitness, context, and everything you figured out. I want to suggest that, and this is something I've been working with a lot of leaders to share with them how they can think about certifying this data itself. So a business stakeholder, of course, a business person is somebody who's well aware of where the business needs to go. They have literacy about the business itself. Like a developer is not going to know this product is designed for this purpose. Of course, they do, they're getting there, but they are very much focused on the technical details. So a business stakeholder here, identifying the appropriate use case for the business, whether it's recommendation of something, and then AI-ready data set that's going to support that use case. So they need to go identify like, hey, look, can you look at purchase history? Can you look at the click-through rate or searches our customers are doing and stuff? They need to be able to identify this. The second, if you're, let's say, an AI engineer or somebody on the technical side of things, this is where now you can determine, okay, I have this data set, this use case. Let me see if I can determine an AI technique that can be applied on these use cases with this type of context. And then the next piece is somebody who's in charge of data itself, like a chief data officer, AI officer, whatever investment in organizations making. Of course, they have some function or people responsible for this. Doing policy validation. Of course, people are working, don't stop them from innovating, but of course have somebody who could be, I don't want to say a police officer, because sometimes governance people are looked at as, okay, they're here to control, but what value, how can they safely help them land wherever they are with the right amount of information. And then if something's wrong, they can of course request a rework, right? When you say self-service of data and other things, it's not an open bar for companies. You still need to have some kind of control with self-service. And lastly, have a committee where you have shared business audience that could democratize this process of approving, like, hey, this data set now is AI ready data, and this is why. So you have like a tally of who was involved in this enrichment process and what did we identify as a use case to address this. So certification process around that. And of course, if they don't want to certify it, of course, they could request for rework and other people can get involved. But the goal is, how fast as an organization can you certify your data that you are, you have stored across various architecture settings? So what I want to talk about here is literacy and enablement. I talked a lot about AI. So this is part 2. I'm looking at the time. So I think I should be able to give you some good knowledge sharing here. So let's look at future of data literacy. Literacy is really about people's knowledge about data. Like, do they understand what information is sensitive, not sensitive? So they can understand what they could do with this. So future of data governance is really literacy. And a lot of times companies focus on literacy or governance, all these initiatives for two dimensions. One, it could be a value it brings to them internally or externally. Internally, like operational efficiency. I want to get my workers all educated about something, or I want people to find data as quickly as possible so they can go and do their job. External could be, I'm heavily regulated. I need to comply. Regulator is asking me, hey, how are you storing your customer information? Like, back in 2008, after the financial crisis, the BCBS, the Basel Committee in the banking area said, all banks need to comply with this regulation. They need to show how they're managing information and how they're sending this information other places. So banks have this big task to demonstrate they are maintaining information with the high quality standards. It's backed by appropriate business rules and other things. So it's happening in regulated markets. Like it could be, I want to have you be the most loyal audience, customer, what have you. It could be an external factor, or I want to increase revenue and other things. So the current reality though, people have all these questions. Like remember that the wheel that I was sharing with you, the challenge for many leaders is executives fail to understand, provide sponsorship. Change management is hard. People are not willing to change. I mean, I got this Excel spreadsheet, or I have got this favorite tool of mine. I'm using it. Why would I change, right? Change management is very, very hard. I think it's a human trait. You really have to be a storyteller. You have to show people what's in it for them when they bring a change. So my parents would be happy if I listened to them all day, every day, right? Of course I do. But anyway, as an Indian, I do. Just a joke if you know about the Indian culture a little bit. Business understanding. Leaders need to have a strong understanding of their business. Complexity. Governance framework. Sometimes you come up with the best framework, but not all frameworks work for your company. Every company's culture is different. People are different. You can't have one size fit for all. That's also one of the big challenges for these leaders. So I'm exposing you to some of the challenges that you see. Now, for any leader, if I give you a bird's eye view on where the biggest challenge is for any leader, at least in the last many years that I've spent in the space, is for a leader to connect a data challenge to a business outcome. For example, if you go out there and say, hey, I've got my data quality bad, nobody's going to care. I had an insurance company where they had agents, productivity was highly impacted. Like they were trying to fix their customer experience. Like we all know this problem. We call a call center, we tell them our story, our problems, and then we get transferred from one place to another. We're so frustrated, I'm going to repeat my story again. So the challenge this insurance company had was the agent did not have the purchase history of this customer in front of them, or like the data quality wasn't appropriate. So average hold time was huge for this company. And they were putting customers on hold, trying to find this information. Again, bottom line impact, customer, we're not going to wait here. I could call another insurance company, I can buy my portfolio there. So one of the biggest challenges really when you have a problem, a data problem, connecting that to a business outcome, whether it's experience, revenue, regulation, whatever that is, very important. So I have 5 minutes, so I don't know, Dana, it's going to take another 10 minutes, but tell me. Okay, thank you. So I want to bring a real life example from Technip Energy. So those of you who don't know, global organization, they operate in 34 countries. They happen to be a customer of DataGalaxy, the company I work for. Average revenue about close to 7 billion. They're in the leading energy engineering and technology company for energy transition. So what they did is when they started out with taking data very seriously. So they went out on this digital transformation strategy, and there are 4 pillars of this strategy. First, digital offering. How do we enable core part of the business, make it more sustainable? For our performance, like the things that they get measured in their industry. The second big piece was data and AI, which is how do you architect the best data and AI architecture that provides experiences for people working with data. Third, operational efficiency, which is really about empowering users with the most trustworthy information. So there's no second guessing, oh, do I use this data set versus the other? how do we leverage that? And then learning and culture. So this is where, how do we unite people? Because of course, as you mentioned, people are coming in with different backgrounds. Some are technical, some are non-technical, some are hybrid. How do you foster that learning and culture for people? So they said, okay, there are 4 stages of becoming a data-driven company. Stage 1, people, like investing on their people. The biggest asset they said is our people. They even decided not to hire from outside data scientists or engineers. They were promoting, training people internally to invest in people itself. The second big piece, they had a formalized governance program where they could define, master, enrich data, responsible use of data, policy standards and stuff. Technology architecture, of course, how do we build as your data grows, we need, buckets or barrels or whatever, where are you going to store your data, right? How do you move things around? So technology architecture. And lastly, the value. So I'm going to go to the next slide and not have, without having to drain this slide a bit. What they said is on the people, the stage 1, they prioritized a digital culture. So they started defining career paths for people. Some maybe not coming from the data space. I think it's a good thing if people come not from data space because they bring really good perspectives. I've seen that at least when I was building teams, people that came outside of the space brought in new ideas and not go with the flow with, and people that are in the same space stuck for many years. So it's a good thing. Data awareness programs, learning paths. So what they decided is, as part of this upskilling, they created this volunteering initiative and they opened it for everybody. Hey, free. If you want to upskill your data skills, if you want to see how you can advance your career, where you can contribute to your business line, this program is open for you. When they first opened it, don't quote me on it, I think they had 250 people register for this. So they said for 9 months they ran this, and each week people were dedicating 10 hours. So if you're a company, maybe you're too busy, maybe 5 hours, at least have some kind of a balance in terms of literacy. And so in terms of governance, what Marie actually is the photo of Marie, a big shout out to her great leader driving digital transformation for Technip. What she did is first, if you look at the, oh, I didn't know that. Okay, doesn't come on the screen here. But if you look at the right-hand side, governance defined 14 domains. So they had, companies compartmentalize their data by domains, business lines, projects, and stuff. So she started with 14 data domains. And if you see here at the bottom, created a one platform so everybody can access data in one place. So Marie created roles and responsibilities like accountability around data as she was cataloging this information. The second, she was also building a relationship between producers of data, consumers of data. Third, prioritizing aligning data efforts, like can I map this back to risk of the company, or is it reducing cost? Like mapping, a lot of companies go on this RCR metric, which is revenue, cost, and risk. RCR, a very famous term. Like if you go in business, a lot of these business leaders talk about these metrics. So started to map that, and then quality was a big component, and then also how do I create a trustful reference where I could go in and find trustful data. Like same thing I was trying to make an argument for AI-ready data, like how do you create a registry around this? So this is their technology architecture. So they have, they call it the data and AI platform canvas. So at the top, you have downstream systems apps, consumers using Power BI for visualizing data. But if I come bottom up, tons of source systems, right? Applications, data platforms, they're using Databricks, Azure, a lot of these, warehouse technologies, and of course, AI platforms. But on the left-hand side, a governance platform, which is the DataGalaxy, the company I work for, using that as a way to create a centralized inventory of data. So that's their technology platform. One of the big achievements, I think, that came out of this initiative for Marie, she made data accessible to all of the data scientists globally. And people, in Chennai in India, Malaysia, London, Paris, Houston, people sitting across different data teams, making that accessible. And this is a big problem, actually. One of the challenges for companies not able to innovate with data is accessibility and trust around data. So very important and great, big shout out to Marie for that. And this is how I see the world sometimes. Just a quick insert is, as companies have tons of sources, they're storing data, there are more and more technology sources, systems, they're processing this data, they're looking at this, doing analytics around this. They want to apply governance, security, and they want to put the data in the hands of consumers. The ones that are doing faster, more effectively are the ones that are innovating, if you look at data. So not giving you stock advice, but I am also looking, maybe curious being in this space, when I look at a company stock, I want to look at how strong their data management function is. Again, it is not a investing advice, but this is something I'm testing myself. So interesting, making data accessible, in my opinion, is really key for companies. And this is maybe the last slide. So they started this initiative 3 months, between July and September. And they interviewed 28 stakeholders and did 7 workshops. So they said, okay, we've got 3 streams. One is the net new business service, NBS, operational performance, and then also they focused on sustainability. If you're following the news, like around climate change, ESG is a big regulation that's tracking, how bad are you as a company for the environment? Like, do you dump all your waste somewhere else, or do you have trucks that bringing in goods from places where you will have a larger footprint versus purchasing locally, right? So step 1, they identified 50 potential data and AI use cases, interviewing people 3 months of time. Step 2, I'm glad they did this, is they didn't boil the ocean going after everything. They said, okay, we're going to prioritize 17 use cases. Even after those 17 use cases, they said 3 are foundational, P0, priority 0. 3 quick wins that we could quickly achieve, and 3 visionary. And out of this, they had more than 21 million euros of gains deploying this strategy, if you will. And there's a project plan. Of course, I will make these slides available if you like. The value process itself. They had they included people from top-down management as well as bottom-up. They worked on very controlled, specific use cases, and then built an MVP. And then once they have the tangible results, enough data points, they started scaling, deploying, and the run. Like if you're a fan of Mario Kart, you have business pilot, digital boost, IT sustain. Like if you play these games. But anyway, that's all for today. Thank you so much for listening in and bringing the best energy here with questions. So thanks so much.
So we do have a couple of minutes. Follow-up questions. We could take 1 or 2.
So you're that energy company and said that they integrated it all in like the Databricks workspace, but they were in like multiple companies. So I know Azure has their segmented across region. Did they just extricate data to like one region, or did you go that level?
So I'm not fully familiar of their setup, but I know they were using some of the warehouse technologies, making sure their data, because a large portion of their team is in Europe, heavily regulated by GDPR. You can't have your personal information, but for any of the business processes like reporting and other things, so they had some controls and setup, but data sovereignty was a big element for them. But I'm not exactly sure how they were cross-sharing information between countries. Go ahead.
So in your discussions with a lot of the CDOs, are you seeing a preparation for GDPR-like type scenarios within the US in the coming 3 years, 5 years, anything of that nature?
For AI.
What?
For AI use cases.
Generally, like across the board. So AI, I think, is going to be a very interesting case, but generally across the board, are you guys seeing that? Because there was I spoke to somebody that was part of the like it's a council for executives, and they're basically prepping for this GDPR scenario within the US within like a 3 to 5 year time horizon.
Yeah, so today I see each state is coming out with their own regulations. California is leading the pack with CCPA, California Consumer Protection Act. So there are GDPR-like type of regulations that are coming in. I think when GDPR came out, there was a huge wave of every state and companies that coming from. I think the biggest thing that I see with most leaders is data sovereignty, where, hey, I don't want my data to be leaving the United States. Even when we go out there and talk about our technology, they're like, the first question, the checklist is, if you're sharing data outside of the country, then we're not going to buy your technology for that. So companies do have like dedicated InfoSec type of functions. I see huge investment around that. At the same time, a lot of companies are also going bold in terms of making sure this data can somehow be accessible to more people in a safe environment. With proper policy compliance and things like that. Yeah.
Any last questions? Shannon?
Kind of related to some of the earlier discussions, so the pace of innovation is so rapid right now, and aside from like every single part that you're doing the data governance, how do you see it impacting data governance itself? Because AI can help with some of the historical problems with data governance and introduces new ones. And you have, to make things accessible to people at the rate that they're going to need it now, and, create new architectures for new kinds of ways of working, things like, companies have so much unstructured data that's now going to become a lot more usable. So how do you manage that rate of change as somebody that's working in data?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked that, because the last, before AI, the wave before the AI, data governance is plagued with adoption issues. Like, because much of this is really involves a lot of business people that are non-technical. We all understand documenting data is very important, but nobody wants to do it. So I think where AI is actually changing the status quo, and I see the positive with AI's addition, is because AI is good in terms of recognizing patterns around data. So it can say, hey, this data may be tagged with this regulation or this particular keyword. Because what companies are trying to do is like, they're sitting on tons of information. They need to classify what type of information do I have? And they could write business rules. They could tell AI, hey, go find data of maybe that's related to financials of my customer, or address information, or something that's PII. So now they can, if they have to comply with regulation, AI has already done 2/3 of the work, and then some human from a governance standpoint can come in and curate and assist in that decision making. So I see that there is immense opportunity for governance people who are doing a lot of manual heavy lifting, and now that process of like at least documenting or getting context around data is accelerating more than ever. Now, are you gonna enrich the right data? Where are you gonna, like, I'm a big fan of Pareto rule. What 20% of your work is gonna drive 80% of the outcome? Now, companies have this responsibility to decide where they need to really focus these efforts. Hopefully that answered your question. Sorry, it's a long-winded.
Yeah, well, my question was kind of like all over the place. I kind of feel like that's the situation right now, is there's both, trying to have competitive advantage, and also risk management, and both of those are accelerating. And so it's interesting.
Yeah, thank you.
Great questions. All right, so while Kash is going to help me do our raffle, everybody go ahead and dig out your tickets. And then in the meantime, just a couple of announcements. So first things first, obviously, as I mentioned, we are the Masters of Science degree in AI and Business Analytics at USF. It's really meant to give those core competencies to people who are mid-level manager or have at least a few years under their belt in their industry and really looking to move into senior leadership roles, being able to do those analytics and business intelligence to make that next step in their career. So if you have any questions about that program, please feel free to reach out to me. We are accepting applications for summer 2025. It's a lot of times people like to wait for that particular semester because you can zip through the entire program in just about a year. So it's pretty amazing. If you have any questions about the coursework, you can speak to one of these two gentlemen right here that have been Nels and Russ, who have been through the program as well. Also, next month's meetup is already posted. If you guys want to get a head start, make sure that you have your seats reserved. Our program alumnus Russ, it will be presenting a data case study where he used Florida Department of Revenue information to predict resales of Florida home sales. So that's pretty exciting. Looking forward to that. Everyone, thanks again. Don't forget to sign up for next month. Be safe driving home, and another round of applause for Kash.